like to talk about the intersection between art and data visualization, and we'll think about it from a couple different directions. So, first, I want to think about data art. So, this is more using data to create art, and one of the pioneers of this art form I think of as Lillian Schwartz. Lillian is primarily a video artist, and she started working on some of these pieces when she was a visiting artist at Bell Laboratories. If we were in class together, I would show you a video where she talks about some of her work, but I'm not sure that I can do that in this format for copyright issues and also just technically. So I'll provide the links. They're here in the slides if you'd like to go look at them. But she has some really interesting work. And then more modern work I think of by Mark Hansen and Ben Rubin. So Mark was one of my graduate advisors when I was in graduate school, and he does a lot of work that I would describe as data art work. So again, I'd love to show you the video of this, but I'll put it into the playlist for our class. This is one of their pieces. It's called Listening Post, and it's getting a little bit out of date these days. It uses data from message boards, so kind of old school forums, and it does text analysis. So it will look for a phrase, like the phrase I am, and then sort of show you the phrases that come after that, so the ways that people describe themselves. When you watch the video, you'll see that the way that the data is displayed is through these small screens, which are put in a sort of array in a room. So you go into this physical space, and you see the data being displayed on all these very small screens in the array. There's also a computerized voice that reads some of the pieces aloud. And Mark Hansen also worked at Bell Laboratories. I'm not sure he overlapped with Lillian Schwartz, although he knows her. And I think the computerized voice actually comes from Bell Laboratories. So this piece, I saw it recently. It was on display in San Jose, one of the last times that I was able to travel before the pandemic. And it's really beautiful to sit in the room and kind of watch it unfold. It has a number of different scenes, and I think Mark and Ben's work is kind of characterized by these different scenes where sometimes it will have a theme, and you'll see the theme both in the way that the data is moving across the array of screens or in the kind of text that is surfaced. Another piece kind of similar that the same two artists created is this. It's called Movable Type, and this is in the lobby of the New York Times building in New York City. And it is hooked up to data from the archives of the New York Times. And again, it's small screens and they're in an array. And again, it has scenes. So the scenes might be something like, I think there's one that uses data from the marriage announcements. So oftentimes those marriage announcements are like, these two people are, this is the daughter of so-and-so and so-and-so, and then she's the daughter of so-and-so and so-and-so. So the piece can go back and look for the parents of the people who are getting married and see if their marriage announcements were in the paper, and kind of trace back through this kind of family tree. That's an interesting one. There's a scene that's about the crossword, so it'll be different clues. There's one that's about numbers or numerals, which kind of relates to some of the data journalism stuff that we've talked about, where you'll see numerals either written in as numerals or written out as words for numbers, and then the surrounding sentence. So I would describe these pieces as data art. They're clearly art. They're something that is on display either in a museum or in this kind of lobby space. They're a way to experience the data, but they're not really trying to, inform you about a particular topic. It's more about the experience. I also think of Moritz Stefaner here. Moritz has done a lot of different work, but this is a piece that he did called Selfie City, which uses selfies as a form of data to see if there are patterns in in selfies across the world in different cities and based on different demographics. So there's a number of folks that are in that kind of space where I think they're making art based on data. And then related, but perhaps more specific, is this idea of self-tracking. So there's a guy named Nicholas Felton. He's a data visualization professional, and he creates visualizations for a variety of venues. I think he's best known for this project that he did for, I think, about 10 years, which was called the Feltron Annual Report. And in the annual report, Nicholas was reporting on data, but it was only data about himself. So he would collect data over the course of a year, and then he would put together this annual report that visualized the data about his life. So, for example, in 2009, he was really interested in all the communications that he had with people. And so he had these cards that he could hand out to people. And they would say, an encounter with Nicholas Felton has entitled you to participate in the Feltron annual report. And then you would get a URL where you would go and record, what did you talk about? What was Nicholas's mood like? And different pieces of information like that, which allowed him to record information about his face-to-face communications. So this is a page from one of his annual reports. This one I think is related to relationships. It's about Olga, who is his partner. And you can see that there's a pie chart there. There's a map of places. There's some different numbers, and it's essentially a self-portrait in data. So he creates these reports. You can buy them. And again, I think that this is kind of an art project. Nicholas isn't, a celebrity or kind of a well-known person other than for the fact of creating these annual reports. But people are interested in looking at them because they give you an interesting insight into a person's life, and they describe his life in a different way than a memoir or an autobiography written with words might. And Nicholas has talked about how the act of collecting data has, changed his life. As the project evolved, he decided that he was going to collect data using his cell phone, so he developed this custom app called Reporter. I'm not sure if this still exists. It was only an iPhone app, but it was for self-tracking, tracking information just about yourself. And he developed it in order to do his own personal reporting, but then other people could use it as well. And I think this was one of the last years that he did the project in 2013. It started, I think, feeling like a burden to do it every year, and he eventually decided not to pursue it further. But like I said, I think he did it for 9 years. Maybe he did it for a full 10. And this year he was interested in all of his communications, not just his face-to-face communications, but his text messages, his email, his Facebook messages. He tracked his physical mail. Every piece of mail that he got, he tracked. And so he created this annual report, which was all about communication. And he actually tracked all of his communications with every person. And just like with the other annual reports, if you wanted to buy a copy of this report, you could buy it. And it's all aggregated data. So it's about him, but it's really aggregated up. But if you're someone that he encountered, that he interacted with, you could also request from him a copy of the data. So I think this is somewhat a commentary on these sites that keep a lot of information on us, but then make it very hard to get the data back. Or some of them, like Facebook, now allows you to do a data download. But so he was trying to be open with the data. So maybe you just had one conversation with him, and then he could give a printout of the interaction. Or maybe you had some text messages back and forth. You could get that information. Again, Olga is his partner. I'm pretty sure this is the book of communication with Olga. So this is all their text messages, their emails, their Facebook messages, all of the communication that he had, and he got it turned into this physical book. So if you were someone who really spent a lot of time with him, you had a lot of communication, which is then being visualized in this other different way, right? Like, we don't think of communication as a book. Again, I think part of the reason why he stopped doing this project is he felt that it changed him. Because he was trying to record every time he had an encounter with someone. If it was the end of the day and he didn't want to have to record some information about an interaction, if you held the door for him, he might just say nothing so that he wouldn't have to record the data. So I think he realized that it was changing the way that he was interacting, and that was one of the reasons for stopping the project. Another similar project is by Tim Clark, The Atlas of the Habitual. This is where he was recording where he went. So it's got all the GPS tracks for everywhere that he went and different themes. So commuting, eating, weekdays, weekends, TGIF, things like that. This is my favorite one. And it's not really the GPS trace that I find so funny. It's just the description. But he says, this is the times I was the most miserable. Includes the time I got pulled over and received a speeding ticket, saw a dead deer fall off the back of a pickup truck, got frustrated for driving past a hiking trailhead several times, running my car into a snowbank, driving 40 miles on a tire donut because I hit an 8-foot ladder in Albany, New York, and having to walk my bike because it broke in some way. Total distance on map, 22.99 miles. So I don't know why that just tickles me so much. I think it's just like a very universal experience to have these unpleasantries. I love the idea of being able to quantify the number of miles of unpleasantries in someone's life. But again, this is another one of those self-tracking projects. And then it kind of crosses over into art because he's displaying it for us. And it's not that we can learn, I don't know Tim. It doesn't really teach me anything about him as a person, but it's an interesting thing to experience.